Good morning. It is Wednesday morning, the 4th of November. And one thing that we know is that around about a half of the country is going to be disappointed today. Not sure which half yet, but well, maybe not even. There'll probably be a percentage that'll be disappointed either way, no matter what happens with our elections. But of those who were wanting a Republican dominated government, they may be disappointed. Those wanting a Democratic dominant government, they might just be disappointed depending upon how the elections turn out. Hopefully you voted. But what I want to do this morning is look at some text of scriptures that help us understand what I believe is the sovereignty of God in an election, even of a democracy as ours. And so we're going to begin in the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 48. I'm going to read 14 through 20. And Israel, this is not the nation, but the man Israel, stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life long to this day. The angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys, and in them let my name be carried on in the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth." When Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he took his father's hand and moved it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day. Now, we don't do this culturally, but this is very much common in the ancient world for sure, and even in many parts of the world today. There is definitely a blessing that is spoke upon the children. It goes to the firstborn always. Firstborn inherits. And in Israel, this was very important in the Old Testament, who received the blessing. Now, Jacob was old. His eyesight was gone because of age. His health, he was not long before he's going to die here. And Joseph may even considered he had some senility, or what we would call today some dementia. Who knows? So he assumes that his father is making a mistake. And he tries to correct that mistake. But it appears that Jacob is not making a mistake. Jacob is doing exactly what he wanted to do. And so he basically says, no, this is the way it is supposed to be, in a sense. Now, when we understand that culturally, this was, Joseph was doing what he thought was right, because the blessing is supposed to go to the firstborn. And there are acts and responsibilities that we have as human beings that we are held accountable for. And so Joseph tries to correct a wrong situation. But in this case, we have a situation, I believe, where the sovereignty of God in the directions and the steps of people, of mankind, enter into the picture and override culture and the intention of any individual. I'd like to read from Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 21. By faith, Jacob, when dying, blessed each of the sons of Joseph, bowing in worship over the head of his staff. So what Jacob was doing in blessing these sons out of the proper order by blessing the younger with the major blessing and making him as head over his brother was by the will of God. It says by faith. And he held on to that conviction. So we see a statement in Hebrews where it says by faith Jacob did this. And then we go back in and look at that actual incident, and we discover that there was actually a purpose and will of God in what was going on. I'm going to pause just a second to let my dog out of the room. Okay, we're back. So, another text of scripture I want to read is Genesis 25 and verse 23. It reads like this. And the Lord said to her, talking about Rebekah now, we're talking about Isaac and Rebekah, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided, and the one shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Now, this is a like scenario to the one we just read with Joseph and Jacob. And this is an after one. This is before, and this is Isaac now. And it is Jacob that is going to be the younger. And when you read the full account, which I won't do because of time constraint, we know that they were in the womb together. They were twins. And Jacob, when his older brother would have been born, seems to have pulled him back in somehow and got born first. So Esau stuck his hand out first. They tied a red string around it because that was the first one to break the womb. Got his hand back in, and then Jacob is born first. But so Jacob's the younger. And yet the word to Rebekah is that in these 2 babies in your womb, these 2 little boys in your womb, the younger of them is going to serve, be at the head, and the older is going to serve the younger. Again, there is a sovereignty of God to fulfill his will and his plans in this issue. Now we're going to look at Romans chapter 9. And we're going to read from 10 to 14. And not only so, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our forefather Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob I've loved, but Esau I have hated. So what we, again, have here is an incident of the sovereignty of God interacting with the will and the free responsibilities of people. So we are held accountable for and responsible for our actions. But God is sovereign in everything and sovereign in carrying out his purposes and plans through our free responsibilities and choices. Proverbs 16:9 reads like this: the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. So we know that we all make plans, we all have desires and wishes, things that we are going to do. When I get up in the morning, my wife often will, not often, but at times will have a list for me, and she'll These are things to help me remember, because I can forget what I'm doing or get involved in stuff. Things that need to be accomplished, things I want to accomplish. And so I can go through that list and accomplish it. Other times I'll have my own idea of what I want to do. I'll get up and I'll say, this is what I'm going to do, but the day will turn out different. Ever have one of those where I'm going to do this today, but then other things encroach upon it. And the next thing you know, you never did what you were planning to do. We all go through that in life. We make plans. We have purposes. Concerning the election of 2020, as believers in our small church of Communion Life Fellowship, we have had people who were very strongly pro-Trump and pro-Republican, others who are very strongly opposed to Trump and pro-Democrat and the policies of it. And of course, you hear the highlighting that you can't vote for the Democrats without voting against life because of the pro-life, pro-abortion. I personally sometimes wonder how many are pro-abortion or pro-life, very strongly pro-life, when there's an election. But the time in between the elections, that pro-life stand takes a huge backseat to their daily life issues and their money giving and even their prayers a lot of times. I think there's a number, because you hear a lot more about being pro-life and anti-abortion from some people within the church during election times than you hear all year long. But what we find is whether you are pro-Democrat, I believe, or pro-Republican, that you would be convinced in your looking at issues, in your relationship before the Lord, in what you're doing, and you carry through on your convictions. You walk out and live your convictions, whatever they are. But in the end, when the voting's all done, and we're entering into the phase where we will, in January 20th, be swearing in a president, whether the present one or a new one, that you understand that the plans are in the heart of man, but it is God who is directing the steps for you and I individually, for you and I as a church, for you and I as a nation, and for the world as a whole. It is important that we do, that we are active, and that we are active as responsibly and intelligently as we can be, which is a lot of work in this day and age with all the social media information that bombards us. But in that activity as children of God, we need to understand we have a sovereign heavenly Father that is directing the course. It doesn't mean we're wrong. I'd say I am very strongly pro-Democrat and the Republicans sweep through and take all the positions in government. Or I'm strongly pro-Republican and the Democrats sweep through and I voted all one way, the other. It doesn't mean that what I did was wrong, because in a free country such as ours, that is a responsibility that I need to take upon myself. And as long as I applied myself to my convictions and what I was doing and walked them out, I've done what I've needed to do. But God is the one that's going to carry out his will and purposes. I don't know what his will and purposes are. I can only know what I can decide to do by what I understand around me. But I can trust God to sovereignly carry out his purposes and plans. I might not even like the consequences of his plans and wills initially or enjoy experiencing them. But if they are God's will and God's purpose and plans, which I know they are because he's sovereign, I can rejoice in the Lord my God and be content with the circumstances of life and glorify him in the way I react to all that goes around me. So I hope this will be some encouragement in the coming days ahead as we see how the election winds itself out. Have a good day.